whatever, we're living in the same room. We're swimming in the same water. Whatever happens, whatever I think I'm doing to something else, I'm in the middle of that, right? I said it last time somewhere, but if I pee in the swimming pool, I'm in the middle of that, right? There's no escaping that. Likewise, because we're all connected, whatever I do has an influence on the whole. If I am, when we go, everything comes back to this, because all of the precepts, the basic precepts, are descriptions of this, of how to avoid hurting ourselves, right? If I think I can steal from someone else, if I think I can hurt someone else, then I have to convince myself, I have to believe, I have to deceive myself first that that person is separate from me, right? If I truly believed, if I truly felt their pain, if I felt the suffering, if I felt the agony, if I felt the betrayal that they're going through, I couldn't do anything to harm them, right? But you all have this ability to change the direction you're going, to determine, actually not even to change, but you have the right to determine which direction you want to go. And it's a matter, a lot of times, it's a matter of making up our mind and saying, I want to go in this direction. Whoever I meet, I want them to be better off for having met me, right? Whoever I meet, I don't want them to be harmed by me. If they're behaving badly, then may their bad behavior not harm others, and may they find their own way forward. May they find a positive way forward. So, I mean, if somebody's behaving really badly, like criminally badly, we have a place for them where they can't hurt other people. It's called jail, right? You don't have to hate them. You don't have to despise them or wish them dead. You just put them somewhere where they can't hurt other people until they eventually get a clue about how can I live more positively. And some people, that may not be this life, right? It may take a long time for them to get that point, but you don't have to hate them. People, some quite clever person, maybe Martin Luther King, said that when Lincoln freed the slaves, he freed all of us. I'm talking about North America. Because if you look at the American South, and you look at the history of slavery, it wasn't until the big plantation slavery got started that somebody came up with the idea that Africans, the black people, didn't have a soul. Well, it's okay to be cruel to them because they don't have souls. It's like, what? Who came up with that dumb thing? But it's more and more ways of trying to justify the harm they're doing to others. And they start lying to themselves. They start telling themselves this crazy stuff. It's like, I kind of want to go, and you are of a spiritual level where you can determine that somebody else doesn't have a soul. But this desire, they felt this connection with people. They, somewhere deep down inside, they knew they were doing something wrong. And they tried to come up with justifications for why it was okay. Well, something in the Bible said it was okay. These people don't have souls. This blah 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 blah, and so it's okay to do this. The Constitution said, didn't say this or whatever, and it's okay to do this. And people start pushing themselves into a very dark place, a very harmful place. To become a human being, it took incredible virtue and merit. I mean, it took something really great to evolve up to the stage of a human being. Because from the perspective of the jump between animal life and human life, it's like a very poor person donating $1 billion to some university. You know, how hard is it for a poor person to accumulate that kind of money? Right? Every once in a while you hear about the old school janitor who donated $100 million to his school. And he lived poor, he lived very humbly and saved his money very carefully for his whole life, and then he donated it, or she donated it. That's what it's like to be born as a human being, because as a human, we have a lot of capacity that animals don't have. You know, when you're hungry, when you're poor, it's much harder to be generous, right? If you're always hungry, if you're always starving, if you're always wishing you had a little bit more, sharing with others, helping others is tough. You know, it's very easy to say, I gotta look after me, you know, adios. And so even the most miserable, worst kind of person that we know had to have done something great, had to have really practiced at a deep level to have made it to the level of a human being. So even though they are still in the grip of bad habits, of maybe animal habits from a past level of existence, they still had to do something quite impressive to become a human being. And when we hate them, when we despise them, or worst, when we kill them, if we hurt them, we are denying that great, whatever it was, that great merit and virtue it took for them to get up to the level of a human being. And to that extent, in a way, I think really we're canceling it out within ourselves, right? If you look at, you know, soldiers have some of the worst time coming back from war. It's not good. You know, people who write movies, people who write books, write all this stuff about, you know, how somebody killed somebody else and they just did whatever and they came back and they got on with their life. Real life isn't like that. I mean, they suffer. It haunts people, right? It really haunts people. And a lot of times their life is nowhere close to what it was before. They lost something, right? Because we're all connected, there's no avoiding the harm that comes from attacking, that comes from hurting another person. It's really ugly. So even, you know, wisdom is about the most precious, wisdom and compassion are about the most precious things you can have. Because if you have wisdom, energy is really helpful, but if you have wisdom, you can really stay out of a lot of trouble. You can avoid a lot of things that are going to come back and hurt you. Always wish for wisdom, right? May I be wise enough to always know the best way forward. May I be wise enough to always rely upon my foundation, my Buddha nature. And for some reason today, maybe I should have made this the topic, but in Buddhism we have this idea of a vow, right? In Korean, to one seuda, right? Like literal translation is like to raise up a wish. But sometimes we really do have to use a firm voice with ourselves to get everything moving in a certain direction. I hate to use this comparison, but I have a dog, and I can't compare this to children because I don't have children, but I suspect the theory is the same, where if I just say, okay, come on, and he doesn't really want to, he doesn't come. I have to come, the voice. Not loud, but, just come, this is the way it's going to be. And if I use that voice, he's like, oh, okay. Right? But if I'm just like kind of, oh yeah, come on. He's like, no, I don't want to go inside today. I want to go over here and sniff this. And the lives in our body are kind of like that. This body is a collection of consciousnesses, of input over billions of years of evolution. And a lot of times they just want to do what they want to do. In Korean we call it opshik. In English, the basic translation is karmic consciousnesses, or karmic states of consciousness, because some of the feelings that we have, some of the thoughts we have, are just echoes of the past. They're echoes of past states of feeling. So if I'm depressed, if I'm hurting, and I keep telling myself, oh, I'm hurting, I'm depressed, I'm sad, whatever, it's like that's getting recorded. That feeling is getting recorded. And so I think everybody's had if you really reflect, you've had the experience where suddenly you feel angry, suddenly you feel sad. And if you really get down to it, you realize there's no real reason, right? Freud called this, I think he called it free-floating anger, where it's almost like you're looking for an excuse to be angry. And if you're really aware, you realize you're angry, and you're looking, well, it's because of, you're looking for something to stick as a reason for the anger. Because you're trying, in a way, we're unconsciously trying to figure out where it came from. But what if it's just an echo from the past, right? What if it's just a former state of consciousness and that echo of that has come back? Well, a lot of times we experience that. In that case, the best thing to do is to return it to this foundation we have, this Buddha nature, and then it can dissolve. And if we do that mindfully, if we're actually aware, focused, paying attention when we do that, then what happens is that dissolves. When it meets this, there's a phrase in one of the sutras that basically says, meeting this great truth of emptiness, all things disappear. And that's really true, because it's like the old cassette tapes, the old recorders, right? Of video cameras. No, video cameras don't use tape nowadays, do they? Never mind. For those of you born before, video cameras used to have tape and cassette tapes. If you had an old cassette tape and it had some recording on it, if you just pushed record and didn't attach the microphone, if you didn't speak into the microphone, it just recorded nothing, right? It re-recorded blankness, empty, no sound, over the top of your cassette, over the top of your videotape. That's exactly what happens when we mindfully entrust things that come back to us. When they come out, if we return them back inwardly, and we're not re-inputting something, if we're being, and this is being mindful, if we're being aware of this connection, they really tend to dissolve. If we just dive in and just chase stuff with our thoughts, we tend to just re-record new stuff. But without this self-reflection, life is really not much different than a pinball, right? We're just bounce around from point to point to point. We hit one thing, react to that, and then something else hits us and we go bouncing off in another emotional direction. But when we start entrusting, when we start being mindful about returning things to this foundation, to this source, then when something comes up, we realize we don't have to just react to it. We actually have a choice about how to react to that. And the more grounded we are, the more practiced at letting go and trusting we are, the bigger that gap, the more time we have before we just react, right? And sometimes it's only a split second, but you realize you actually have a choice about which direction you want things to go. You know, somebody says something just crazy on the phone, your parents, your children, your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whoever, and you know, you could just blow up and just completely come unhinged. But you realize for just a split second, you have a choice about which way you want things to go, about which way things will go. And the more practiced you get at entrusting, at letting go, you realize, okay, that choice would feel nice, but it's going to hurt. That's just going to cause more problems. And so I'll go, okay, I won't react to this. I won't bite the hook. I won't chase that down. And this is just one of the things about what practice gives us, what benefits we get from practice. And these, like I said, I called them opshika, or these karmic states of consciousness. These lives within our body are in many ways like herding cats or school kids, or I give a talk at a Korean army base, you know, they're like soldiers in a way. If I'm talking to a company of soldiers and I tell them, oh, you guys can't go up that mountain. No, you guys aren't ready yet to hike up, to climb that mountain. What are they going to do? Oh, okay. Right? All right, no problem. But if I tell them, oh yeah, you guys can climb that. Yeah, no problem. As a matter of fact, go do that. You guys, I know you guys can do it. Even if I don't know, you know, even if I honestly don't know if they can do it, if I have faith in them, if I tell them they can do it, if I believe they can do it, they take their cue from that and they respond accordingly. If I tell myself, oh, I'm sick, I feel terrible, I feel tired, whatever, what's going to happen? How are the lives of my body going to respond to that? Like, oh, okay, we're sick. All right, gotcha. You know, that's how they respond. I mean, everything works like that. One of the coolest things I saw in a while was, anybody here watch The Voice? It's an American talent singing program. But it's fun because the coaches are really high-level artists, and they approach everything from an artist perspective. You know, they aren't trying to make somebody into a star. They're just trying to help them develop their skill and become better. And somebody asked Pharrell, you know, oh my gosh, what do you tell yourself before you go on stage? You know, because they're like, oh, you know, how do you overcome the fear and all this? And he said, I just tell myself, oh, it's going to be great. I'm going to have a fun time. And people, oh, you know, okay. If you tell yourself, oh, this is going to be great. If you tell yourself, I'm really grateful for the people who showed up. I'm really grateful to be able to meet these people. I'm really grateful for this job. It becomes something to be grateful for. It becomes something that's a blessing in my life. And this is you can all experiment with this. You can all see this at work in your life. I mean, if you're bound and determined to prove it wrong, oh, it's not going to work that way, then you already made up your mind it's not going to work that way and you're not going to see anything. But everything, the other meaning of the Heart Sutra that we chanted at the beginning of this talk today is that everything moves according to the thoughts we give rise to. Right? If we say, this is going to be a great day, everything within us and outside of us moves in that direction. Now, there's karma, there's other things going on, there's other people dealing with their own problems that I can't control, right? I don't get to make other people's choices for them. They have to make their own choices. And sometimes I get stuck living with, having to deal with those consequences. If you have a crazy neighbor, if you have a drunk neighbor, right? It's inconvenient, but that neighbor is the one who made those choices. That neighbor, and you just have to deal with it as best you can. So you don't get to completely control the world. But again, it goes back to this, how do we raise thoughts? What kinds of intention do we give rise to? If we say, even if I meet somebody who's behaving badly, even if I meet somebody who's lacking wisdom, show me the way forward. Let's find a way to turn that into something healthy. Let's find a way to turn that into something useful. And if you input that thought, then again, things move in that direction. This is why my teacher always said, always view things positively, because everything moves in that direction. If I say, it's exactly like, you don't really see it in the Tanjung patterns here, but it's exactly like fractals. Right? If I look at the negative aspect of something, if I look at one aspect, or the positive, but if I look at the negative aspect, and if I just find out what's wrong with this guy or with this situation, then I can solve the problem. But what happens is, you go down, you magnify the view by 10 times, and there's a whole other world there. And you magnify the view, just like fractals. You magnify the view again, and there's another complete, it never ends. You go on forever like that. And all that happens is your own heart becomes much more negative. Your own viewpoint becomes much more, what's the word? Well, depressed. More than one author or historian who has focused on the topic of war crimes has ended up committing suicide because they find something they feel like they have to tell the world about, and they wind up submerging themselves in this history of horrible atrocities, and it really gets hard for them to find their way out sometimes, to find their way back to a more healthy or positive world. But like I said, because everything moves according to the thoughts we give rise to, we have a choice. You can look at Donald Trump and you can say, oh my, North America or America is just spiraling down the drain, right? I certainly hope not. Or you can look at it and say, this is a chance for the people of America, of the US, to figure out what's important to them, like a vaccine, right? Like a weakened virus vaccine. This is a chance for them to remember what's important, what values do they need to grab hold of. And if you think about things like that, okay, this is all part of the process of growing up. This is all part of the process of evolution. Previous generations had different circumstances they learned from, and so this is this generation's chance to think about what's important, to think about values. Yeah. Any questions?
What is procto?
Pardon?
Is it procto?
Oh, fractal.
What's that?
It's a mathematical thing. It's a pattern. The visual appearance is a pattern. It looks a little bit like a paisley, kind of a pattern. But, on the computer screen or a photograph, it may only look this big. If you completely blow it up full size, all of a sudden there's a whole new world there. There's a whole new detail. And, a normal photograph, a normal image, you blow it up and you see only pixels, right? But because this is a mathematically generated pattern, it keeps going endlessly. It's like, you look at one Buddha And you think, oh, okay, that's one Buddha, and then you expand, and there's a whole nother realm there. And if we, my point is they're kind of cool, and I think there's another mathematical purpose for them. I don't remember off the top of my head. But my point is, if we start looking at things negatively, if we start viewing them, self-pity, hatred, despising, just judgmental, it never ends. There's, with a normal kind of problem, the attitude is, oh, if I find the root, I can take out the root and the problem will be solved. But often that's not the case. It just goes on without end, without end, without end. And the only way to really overcome it is just to jump over it, right? A lot of things, you realize, it's like Alexander in the Gordian knot, right? They gave him this big knot, and instead of getting caught up in the knot, he just chopped it in half. A lot of things, you just need to jump over them. Why did my mother behave that way? Why did my grandmother behave that way? Why was this person acting like this? Why did this thing happen to me? And it's not stuff we can solve, and sometimes it's just not, there's no use for it. It's like, why ever, that cannot be a word. I'll just use it anyway. Why ever she was behaving like that, why ever he was behaving like that, it doesn't matter. How do you go forward from here? Right? If you get in an argument with somebody, sometimes it gets it gets petty, but it gets easy to argue about who did what wrong, right? But you said this, and you did this, and you did this, kind of a thing, right? But most of the time that's useless. It's like, okay, going forward from here, what's important? What do we have to do? Trying to, like, for example, in a relationship, or just, friendship, business, working relationship, whatever, trying to pinpoint what somebody did wrong is in some ways like a form of violence. It's a form of beating them up, a form of dominating them by saying, oh, you did this wrong, now admit it, whack, whack, whack. But it's useless. It's, even if you got there, you just leave them more angry or more resentful. So it's like, okay, what do we have to do health-wise, mental health-wise, whatever, going forward? And that's the important question, really. It's like, okay, you're here now. However you got here, that's how you got here right now. What are you going to do going forward? How are we going to keep growing? How are we going to live positive lives? How are we going to be someone who makes everyone around us better off? How are we going to make how are we going to become someone who makes everyone around us brighter, right? When you leave, people are like, oh, I wish that guy was here. I wish he was here. But just somehow everything, I seem to be, having that person around makes me function at a higher level, right? If we can be that kind of a person, then even just giving the people around us a taste of that higher level functioning it gives them a reference point. It gives them something that tells them, oh, right, there's a better way. There's something more than just this. I don't know what that was, but I kind of want that back. How do I get that? And they don't lose that reference point. One of the cool things they say about prenatal education is that, especially dad too, but when especially mom is practicing while pregnant, if she is really making a connection with this very deep place, then the unborn child automatically feels that connection, automatically has that taste of something truly evolved, You could say truly divine, truly holy. Well, what that means is later on, as children and as they grow up, your kids aren't as likely to be deceived by ordinary negative things, right? Because they've had a taste of something much deeper, of something much more connected with the whole. I'm not sure I'm saying this right. It's like if you've ever had a really deep, loving relationship, something that's very shallow or very abusive isn't going to attract your interest. And as a matter of fact, it's probably going to push all your warning buttons that says, run away. This is not a good place to be. Because you know what a caring relationship was. It's sometimes with children and parents, you see this, where if the children had a really good relationship with their parents, they're not easily seduced by men or women because they, who are trying to use them, because they know what caring felt like. If they if they were unfortunate enough not to have that kind of close relationship, then they tend to mistake more abusive relationships for caring. This is something that social workers see quite a bit, because they didn't have that reference point of a selfless love from a close parent. And so they go looking for it in relationships with other people because they don't know what it's supposed to feel like. They haven't had it recently, enough of it that they can really remember. And it's the same thing with this spiritual practice. If we get in touch with this very deep place, then it gets harder and harder for us to be satisfied with anything that isn't this very deep place. And one of the hard things about practice is that we have more habits from our past evolution than we do from our future evolution. We have all the habits as we evolve from an animal, all the habits as we try to evolve into a mature human being, but we don't have the habits from the next stage. So our habits, our ideas of what's right, of what works, automatically default to what worked in the past. What worked when I was an animal just about to become a human being. For an animal, that was a really impressive stage. That was an impressive amount of work. But as a human being, I need to be doing better than that, right? And as somebody, hopefully, mature human being, what do I need to do to keep going further? Well, I don't really have those habits yet because I haven't done it yet. So there's always this aspect of trying to grow forward, of trying to reach for that thing that we haven't done yet. And that's why growth is hard. That's why it gets easy to accidentally deceive ourselves, because our default habits are from previous stages of development. They're not necessarily from our future stage of development. But when we entrust everything, when we entrust what we know, when we entrust what we don't know to this foundation, to this Buddha nature, it sorts it out, right? Because it's connected to everything, we get a feeling, we get a nuance of which direction we need to go, especially in the beginning. And the thing about that is we have to follow up on that. If we don't follow up on that, that feeling disappears, right? But if we follow up on it, it gets more and more and more stronger. And it's, all right, this is the way to go. But if instead we ignore it, instead follow our old habits, it disappears for the time being. We have to start over again to get back to that point. And this is also, again, this is because of our connection with everything. We're not connected through our intellect to everything, right? Some of us are smarter or dumber than others. Dumber, that's not a great word. Some of us are smarter, or some of us are not as smart as others. Some of us are not as emotionally mature as others. Some of us, we all have different blind spots, right? Try to find anybody who has the same blind spots, right? That's a whole nother topic. But this deep place is where we're connected to everything in the universe, and this visible realm and unseen realms, all the wisdom of all the great teachers, of all the intelligence, of all the discoveries of all the scientists. We're all connected to that through here. And so to the extent that we're trusting this place, it's making that connection with the whole and letting us know which way we need to go, which way we need, how we need to go forward. And so if we ask a question, all right, what do I do in this situation? What do I do about my kids, my job, my husband, my wife, my whatever? If we have these kinds of questions, ask them inside. Sometime, the more you practice, the faster the answers come out and the more clear they are. But even if they aren't totally clear, even if they aren't totally strong, because we're connected, something comes back out. And the question is, are we listening? Right? Can we listen enough to feel it and not just follow our habits? Right? Not just follow what our habits tell us we want to go do. If you find yourself, if you keep thinking about a lyric from a song, why is that going through my head? Sometimes you want to go, oh, am I supposed to learn something from this? Does this apply to my situation? If you see a book about a health condition in the store, and all of a sudden you really want to read that book, maybe that's this deeper spot telling you, this is the piece you need to take a look at. And maybe it's only one piece in the book. Maybe it's only one moment that song, that verse from the sutra applies. But ask yourself, does this apply to my life? Is this something I need? And then whatever it is, let go of that again so you can move beyond that stage. Because a lot of these things are doorways. I mean, the best way I can describe it is a doorway. You see a doorway, you see the other side of the doorway, and then you walk through the door, right? And you go forward. But because it's something new, because it's something unexpected, because it's something sometimes kind of makes us kind of pleased with ourselves that we actually made some growth. We felt like we grew. We want to hang on to that experience, right? If you compare that to a doorway, that's like walking through the doorway, turning around and staring at the doorway from the other side going, wow, that's cool, awesome. I'll just stay here for a while and stare at the doorway, right? If you did that in the hallways here at the university, people would probably be annoyed with you. It's like, hey, buddy, come on, we got to get going. But it's the same thing. It's, we need to go forward. That wasn't the final point. That wasn't the finish point. But you let go of that with gratitude and you go forward. What's the next thing going to be? We don't know. Probably not quite exactly like anything in the past. Right? Because we're moving forward. We're developing, we're growing. And so what we need tomorrow isn't going to be the same thing we need today. But because it's something new, it's also kind of hard to wrap our heads around because it's usually not something we exactly anticipated, right? If I exactly anticipate what I'm going to need tomorrow, I'm probably going to be wrong. I'm almost certainly going to be wrong because what I think I need tomorrow is based upon my fixed ideas of today. It's based upon the thing that I'm not seeing today, right? Whatever my faults are, whatever my weaknesses are, I'm not seeing those. So what I need to do tomorrow is going to be addressing these things that I'm not seeing. So if I'm trying to rely upon my intellect to tell me what I need to do, it's going to be telling me everything except the thing I need to be doing. Right? Oh, go over here, go over there. It's like putting the two north ends of two magnets together. Right? You get them together and just, oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. because my own attachments, my own issues are the ones I don't see. But this very deep place, this deep connection actually knows what I need to be doing. It knows what direction I need to go. And I was going to say it knows how much I can handle, but I'm not entirely sure that's the right way to put it. I wind up getting about as much as I can swallow, right? Maybe I need to develop this much, but today I can only absorb this much. And that's just the way it is. You know, you don't, but you keep working at it, you keep working at it. If you talk to any weightlifter, any honest weightlifter, they'll tell you it's not even so much the amounts of weight you're lifting, but the fact that you're doing it almost every day, right? The day to day to day to day, a bit every day, is where the real progress happens, is where the real growth happens. It's not the, okay, I'll slack off for 2 weeks and now I'll suddenly do something. Right? That's not the way real growth is made. It's just in Korean, gujinhi. Just chunking away at it, just bit by bit by bit by bit. And so sitting meditation is good, but you are your Buddha nature. Your Buddha nature is you, and it's wherever you are. So whatever you confront is a chance to practice and trusting it, is a chance to practice getting in touch with your Buddha nature. It's whatever comes up, whatever issues you have, whatever problems you have, whatever irritations you have, whatever gratitude you have, whatever questions you have. If it occurs to you, remember, oh, right, ask that insight and trust that insight and just see what happens. See what kinds of response comes out. See what you can learn from that, and then let that go and keep going forward, because there's always going to be something new. To keep growing, to keep developing, is always going to be the stuff where you're not today. It's, it was a disturbing revelation when I was in the first grade that things seemed to get harder as time went by. And then I noticed that the second grade and the fourth grade students, their recesses were shorter than mine. They had to spend more time in the classroom. And I just had this little doubt. Is that really going to be like that, where it gets harder and harder? No. But in a way it is, because we don't get to sit in the same classroom. We don't get to sit at the same grade level forever, right? And actually, sometimes you take a rest, right? Sometimes you stop, you sit down, you take a break, you get your energy back, but then you get going again. Then you get back on the bus. It's almost a I don't know what the word is, a joke. But if you ever meet somebody from your hometown who still 20 years later, 10 years later, 20 years later, still acts like he's in high school, it's just like, oh my goodness. It's just, it'd be just like hell to still be at that point in my life. You want to move beyond that. You want to grow beyond that. You want to discover something beyond that. And that's really what we're all here for. What we're here for, and we are here because even the most unimpressive of us made up their mind that they wanted to do something better. They wanted to try to move beyond something. They wanted to try to evolve. Something about this higher level of a human being seemed right. Something about being more generous, about being able to live without eating or being eaten, without hunting or being hunted. Something about this level seemed better. So every single person you meet at some point has done something truly great, has for a long time, for a hard time, has done something quite impressive to make it up to this level. So even if they don't seem to even if they don't seem to be behaving well, even if they seem to be behaving badly, remember that they've done something quite special. And if you need to deal with them in a positive way. Deal with them in a way that will hopefully allow them to grow. Will hopefully allow them to move forward in a more positive way. I've talked for probably way too long today, so I'll stop here. Thank you very much.